you gonna help me out of this mess?
I'm gonna keep yapping, because in my professional opinion, the change is an improvement.
Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kami, and I'm a completionist who reviews every game after 100% trophy completion. I've been in a mood to play something simple and laid back, a title that harkens back to the good old times. That led me to completing Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy. Jak and Daxter was released in 2001 by Naughty Dog Studio. Known for the Crash Bandicoot series at the time, the studio released this title exclusively for the PlayStation 2. For this review, I played the PlayStation 3 remaster developed by Mass Media Games. If you haven't played it before, or you're looking for a reason to play it again, allow me to showcase what it has to offer.
Brave adventurer! You two couldn't find your way out of the village without training. Before you do anything else, you better go through the warp gate and get some practice.
The game is a platformer with tons of collectibles to find throughout multiple zones. The premise is simple, and it is. What becomes apparent quickly is the seamless connection between each zones. There's no loading screens at all, and that amazes me. The game's optimization is highly commendable, as it makes travel seamless. The fact that I can go the whole game without having to wait for a loading zone feels extremely convenient, and it kept me engaged. Each loading zone has dedicated tasks, which allowed me to return to the next day and know exactly what goals I needed to achieve. The collectibles known as precursor orbs never feel obscure to find, which allows the player to feel a consistent feeling of progression. This is incredibly important when the game revolves around collecting these. The moveset feels limited, but the player is given enough to get the job done. There's the melee attacks, the roll, the double jump, and crouch punch. Since you'll be spending a lot of time jumping, it's important that the movement feels good. Obviously, what feels good is debatable, but I describe the movement as precise. The jumps are de-emphasized, which means each jump requires precise timing. If we compare this to Nintendo's famous mascot Mario, in both Sunshine and 64, Mario feels slicker than oil, and his jumps are grandiose. He can jump in bounds to cover far distances at great heights. Jak, on the other hand, is slower and requires accurate timing to successfully land. If we look at Mario, he has a lot of forward momentum when combined with the stick movement. Jak barely has any, if none. This feeling coincides with the level design layout. Platforms shift and ledges are accurately scaled to encourage the player to have a great deal of care in their performance. For some players, this can be frustrating as jumps are tightly designed, and missing that jump resets a decent amount of progress. The issue for me is that Jak can feel floaty at times, especially when turning corners. Combined with tight jumps, the floaty running can feel imprecise, which goes against the design of the levels. To accompany the player, the game features a hybrid camera, which is both free and fixed. It rotates around the player, but it sometimes shows awful angles. So when the player has to perform tight jumps and restart way back if they fail, it feels like the player has to fight against the game. I've had multiple moments where I questioned if I made a jump because the camera doesn't show the depth I needed to clear. Not only that, but at times, the camera obscures where I needed to jump, which is infuriating in more stressful segments. It's not awful, but it reminds me of the time period the game was designed in, and it makes me grateful for the advancements made in later games. It's not stressful to die and retry. There is, however, a frustration when the player has to repeat tedious or tightly designed areas because they fell into the abyss due to some 6th generation level design BS. The trade-off presented feels fair, allowing the player to try again and again without the concern of losing lives and restarting entire levels. After any power cell is collected, the game saves, which is great, and after any precursor orb is collected, it's always counted. This means death doesn't make the player feel real loss, which I appreciate. The player is given the choice to go to the area they want to complete. Since the game only requires a total of 72 power cells, the main collectible, it offers a great amount of freedom to choose how they complete the game. Because the levels are all seamless, the only way out is the way the player came. I quite like this approach, as it forces the player to dedicate themselves to a zone. If you prefer dedicating a level for one main task, like Mario 64 or Sunshine, this isn't the case. The benefit, however, is that the player can leave whenever they want. To accompany you on your journey is Daxter, a mouthy sidekick who gives hints on solving minor puzzles and where to go on behalf of the developers. If you're aware of God of War Ragnarok's hints from Atreus, this is far from this. Daxter will seldomly give a hint once, but that's it. This did cause some confusion, where I wish Daxter spoke more. There's some zones where I questioned what to do, but I didn't mind figuring out what to do. He's also a part of Jak's attacks as they fight side by side. Whilst the player controls Jak, Daxter feels like a worthy sidekick who helps throughout the game. This in turn emphasizes that the game is about the both of them. The game also features enemies that aren't difficult to face. They're more like inconveniences. To combat these enemies, the player has access to Eco, the game's power-ups, which grant temporary abilities such as running faster, shooting fireballs, and killing stronger enemies. I feel that Eco was implemented well enough. However, I hate the animation that plays when it's collected. The little run has allowed me to take damage, which annoyed me especially when I was running low on health or messed up precise jumps I needed to make. I feel some areas have elements of unnecessary BS. Spider Cave had annoying enemies that disrupted my jumps, or Snowy Mountain with enemies that constantly harass me. I could chalk it up to getting good, and I did that, but there were noticeable moments which annoyed me. The game also features a hovercraft called the Zoomer. The Zoomer feels a little floatier than I would have liked, but it didn't ruin the play experience. I think the bigger pain was the level design, with objects that always seemed to get in the way. The crashes slowed down the momentum developed, but they were more annoyances than actual issues.
Get in there before I turn you both into ferns!
The story of Jak and Daxter is rich with charm. If you've played Naughty Dog's Uncharted games, the dialogue is similar. Daxter is funny, and he frequently puts a smile on my face when he speaks. Even when the player dies, the end screen features amusing dialogue from him. The dialogue between characters is short and snappy, which I appreciated. The story is simple and it conveyed what was necessary to the player. There's not much to say about the narrative, since it's straight to the point. I acknowledge that the purpose was to motivate the player, to explore new areas, but I never felt distress or any stakes. I actually think it serves the easygoing tone. The issue with that is when stakes are presented, do I really care? No. Why do I not care? Because I know I just need to collect more orbs, not save the world. My main criticism is about Jak himself. This is a story about two guys who have to save their island, and Jak is about as interesting as sliced bread. Because he's silent, he adds nothing to the narrative, and everything conveyed is through Daxter. This, in my opinion, ruins the whole point of the game being about a duo. He says nothing to Daxter. There are visual hints to show personality, but nothing that makes him a character. It makes no sense during the ending where he tries to be romantic towards another character when absolutely nothing was established. Silent protagonists aren't an issue themselves. However, the game is called Jak and Daxter. So having Daxter be the only one that speaks eliminates the opportunity for the player to grow attached to Jak, since Daxter is clearly defined. Since Jak 2 and 3 actually developed him as a character, it seems Naughty Dog acknowledged this flaw too. Visually, the game looks great. I played the HD version, which looked great and felt buttery smooth at 60 frames per second. Although it is important to note, the PlayStation 2 was also 60 frames per second. Each area is colorfully designed, and the level layouts feel unique. The color complements each area, which ensures no zone feels stale. This in turn emphasizes the casual tone set by the narrative. The UI is simplistic, but it shows what's necessary without being overbearing. I do feel the UI did not get the treatments the models did. The UI looks blurry at times, and the low-res textures for the UI would be benefited by a fan texture pack if the game were emulated. The models are distinct, but it's noticeable that the game looks like a PlayStation 2 game. Although, if you do look at the PlayStation 2 game as a comparison, the PS3 looks way clearer. It doesn't look sharper, but it looks clearer. I noticed a lot of sharp edges, which could have benefited from anti-aliasing. Whilst I can't make a direct comment if anti-aliasing was used by the developers for the remaster, if we look at the PlayStation 2 version, it doesn't look sharp because the footage is so blurry, which masks it. If we compare this to the Metal Gear Solid collection also on the PS3, there's a noticeable difference. The textures don't look too dated, but once again, this could be improved upon with an upscale texture pack. As the game is 720p, and I played this on a 4K monitor, this did feel noticeable. Whilst I do understand it was meant to run smooth on the PS3, I feel at times the visuals could have benefited from further improvement. It's definitely better than 480i or 480p on the PlayStation 2, but it could have looked cleaner. The soundtrack is suitable for the game. Each track complements the environment, but they're not too memorable. The drums and melodies go hand in hand at creating a fun, easygoing tone, which made collecting precursor orbs more fun. The sound effects sound good at times. I did notice at times some of the audio samples felt a little too low in quality. My theory is that because the game was made for the PS2, and those games were made for CRTs, it could be skimped on. It's not immersion breaking, but it can be distracting when listening to Jack's breathing, for example, which sounds like it has a high pass filter with a bit crusher. A majority of trophies were story related, making the completion journey easy. If I were to rank these on a scale of difficulty, this is an easy 1.5 to 2. There's really nothing for me to comment on each trophy since it's all collectible based. If you try to collect everything, then you'll get every trophy like I did. Enjoy the montage.
See if we can catch air of those workers.
I do have to admit, however, I did make a mistake. I forgot to record the final 2 trophies. I do apologize for this, as it was a genuine mistake. Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy is a fun game to complete. It made me grin, and it challenged me when presented with trickier levels. The game is a light breeze, which I can highly recommend for anybody who just likes platformers. If you're looking for a game to enjoy without too much of a challenge, definitely give this a go. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching. What do you think of this game? Is it your favorite in the trilogy? Let me know in the comments below, and have a lovely day.